Right.
Apologize for my.
All right, let's think, and over to your place. We
I'd
can
be
go
okay with that too, just when it's cooler, not right now.
take the show on the road.
Yeah.
We've never done that.
I've never done it, but it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah,
Well,
we have a way, we've got the fancy space kind of downstairs that we
Yeah,
have a
you've
way to
got a
put
nice
up stuff,
meeting
so.
room, yeah.
Yeah, the only place with air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know.
Oh,
We can figure it
well, the wheels are spinning. All right, let's go, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Just for those, that are here that missed our previous conversation, we're thinking about taking the show on the road in the future. We've got some really great, potential hosts, an urban farm and a recycle reuse facility, so, more to come on that. If we can link it all up, maybe we can do that. I think that'd be good fun. 'Cause that's the beauty of having such a diverse sport, right, is all the different perspectives and things that folks are doing. So, all right, as always, we'll do a round robin and go around the room. Matt, why don't we start with you?
Matt Waller, Corning Township trustee.
Craig Davidson, representing Health Commissioner Custerman.
I'm Denise Treehouse, County Commissioner.
Tony DiPuccio, Waste Generator Representative.
Michelle Walsh, Solid Waste Manager, Hamilton County Resource. Sue Magnus, City of Cincinnati Representative.
Colleen McSwiggan, Executive Director for the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub.
Dominique Peebles, Rick Garden, and General Member.
Alex Odette, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Sarah Mooring, Hamilton County.
Tom Terciano with Rumpke. Here with Rumpke.
Sam Dunlap, Carbon Harvest.
Crystal Forty, Cincinnati. Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Kevin Tsai with Commissioner Treehouse's office.
Abigail Miller, Hamilton County Resource.
And Brad Johnson, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Very good. Now we know who's in the room. Welcome all that are, coming in via Zoom. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes. We all had a chance to look at the minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, any conversation? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, they pass. Public comment. I don't have any cards. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would, like to make public comment?
Or no.
All right, well now, we're gonna have a faster meeting than usual. All right, next item, resource revenue updates and analysis, that's attachment B, and Michelle, I'm gonna turn it to you.
Sure. So, this is comparing the revenue so far this year through May, with, last year, 2022. It's pretty steady with the in-district waste. It's a small decrease, 2,000 tons or, 0.6% to less than 1%. Out of district is an increase of about 1.7% or 9,000 tons. And out of state is a decrease of a little, almost 4,000 tons or 7.5%. So overall, because of the out of district increase, it is an increase of about $12,000 over where we were last year. Any questions?
Just a clarification, when you say, percentage decrease, is that, for instance, when you say the industry, is that on the industry amount?
Yes.
Okay.
So are you covering this sheet as well with the budget briefing, or is that showing up somewhere else on the agenda?
Yes, that is later on in the agenda. It is, the next, it's the first policy item. So I can go into that.
Yeah, why don't we go into that?
Okay.
Yep.
So, there is an attachment, but I also have a little bit more detailed highlight. So we are in the process of pulling together the budget, the 2024 budget for, the Board of County Commissioners to approve. And, so most of what is in this budget is based on the plan update that is about to be ratified. So, it's pretty much what is in the plan. So usually I'll go into an explanation of how it's different from the plan. It's what's in the plan this time because we're so close to the plan being ratified. I did include, and I will share for those who are online or want to look at it closer, a little bit more detail of overview. And like I said, this is a draft. So what I'm hoping to do is we can discuss where this is at, if there's any other changes made. So I'll start at the top. The proposed budget right now is about $4.5 million. This includes a $500,000 impact grant, which is something that the committee has discussed a few times. Seems like most people were on board, but that'd be something I'm asking you if you want to move forward. That is not in the plan, so this would be something we'd be spending down the carryover balance as a special item. The revenue is projected at $3.8 million. This is higher than the revenue that we projected in the plan, which is about 3.6. So, because of that, we're spending less of the carryover to do the budgeted items that we had in the plan. A few key things that I wanted to point out. We have budgeted $60,000 for an electric vehicle. I feel a little bit like a broken record because we've budgeted to buy a vehicle for the last 3 years. We've not bought a vehicle. We just keep, etching on with the one that we have, but we're hoping that we have the infrastructure in place to have an electric charging station and buy it. That's what we're waiting for. We don't want to buy a vehicle and then have to turn it in. And so we're holding off. We're hoping that happens in 2024. We have seen an increase in communities requesting tire collection programs, so we subsidize the cost of the tire recycling, like the 30-year tire recycling. We've seen an increase in that. Unfortunately, we were hoping that we'd see a decrease with the work that the XDP has been doing, but we've seen an increase in demand. So it may just be that the word has gotten out more about that program, even though it's been around for a few decades. So this budget does include a $10,000 increase in that budget for a total of $30,000 for those recycling. We've increased the backyard composting education. This year we did not budget for a backyard compost bin sale. When we did it last year, we got a pretty low turnout, and so we thought, well, maybe we've saturated the market, but staff has been working with Great Parks, possibly doing a joint, a partnership with them, which I think would be great. So we're looking at more backyard composting education budget. We've budgeted $150,000 for an organic feasibility study. That was in the plan, but I pointed out here, have sped up the timeline of that, so it may be something that we actually spend in the 2023 budget and it doesn't come out of 2024, but I'm putting it in there just in case. We have taken out the awards ceremony. Unfortunately, it's a nice event, but it does take a lot of staff time to organize, and I think that our resources can be used better other ways, and we can also still recognize, we can still have awards and just recognize people on social media instead of having a whole breakfast thing. Hamilton County Public Health has requested an increase in the funds that we provide them to do solid waste facility inspections of 15%. So that is in there. And then lastly, we increased the Waste Reduction Innovation Grant. This year we budgeted $75,000. We've increased that to $100,000. The carryover balance is projected as, January 1, 2024 to be $5.6 million. We are required, just as a reminder, to keep 8 months operating in our carryover, which is that current budget is about $3 million are required to keep. So I did include in the back here, and I'll scroll for those who are looking online or interested. This is the pie chart that we were looking at. Here for the visual learners. And then we included some line items here. I'm not going to go over all of these. I just kind of wanted you to get an idea of the buckets of money that are being spent and where they're being spent. So I'm happy to take any questions. I didn't really do that. Most of the highlights that were actually in the policy packet, I went over, so.
Electric vehicle, is that $60,000 just for the vehicle, or does that include?
That does not include the infrastructure for a charging station. And that is, we're just guessing. We don't know how much that will be.
Michelle, it wouldn't be a meeting without me causing a problem, so I'll throw one out at you here. The impact grant that you hit between $15,000 and $100,000. So one of the things that, in my attempts to change the way the tipping fees went out, is to approach some of these communities that really don't have infrastructure. They've gotten $0. I know that when you're talking $500,000, that's a lot of money to reduce below 15,000. But is it possible to look at awards that would be, I mean, some of these communities have gotten zero, a start would be 2,000 or 3,000 for. I mean, that's gonna mean a whole lot more applications, but I really think that's gonna hit some of the communities that in the past, I know that some will sit, 15 doesn't sound a lot, but it's gonna eliminate some, I think.
Absolutely. So, great question, and we set it at 15 because our innovation grant is 15,000 and under. So we have the innovation grant, that's a $100,000 budget. That is open, it's not a competitive grant in that all the applications are due, April 1st. You can apply as long as there's funds, you can apply. Actually, you can apply if there's not funds, and we'll carry it over to next year. And we evaluate it on its own and then decide if we award it. So that would be the one under 15,000.
So an innovation can just be an impact and not an innovation, I guess?
So the impact grant is a competitive grant. It's a bigger project is kind of what we're looking at. And certainly the innovation grant, I mean, we're just kind of playing with words. It could be impactful, but it's really just,
Right. Well, I take it innovation as being new technology, different technology.
I see.
And I take impact of, we haven't used the basic technology yet, let's go with that. So I don't know, maybe I'm wordsmithing it too much, but that's kind of the genesis of my question on that.
Okay. Yeah, we certainly try to get communities to apply, and we have got communities to apply for the innovation grant and the impact grant.
Okay. So innovation doesn't necessarily mean I'm changing technology here.
No, innovation is innovative, and it can be innovative to them. It doesn't have to be innovative to the world.
Like,
I feel much better with that.
Well, to give you a for instance, so we actually got one of those grants, that was the first grant that we got at the hub, because we needed the equipment to be able to do our electronics recycling days. So we got pallet jacks, and we got, safety equipment, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't, changing the world, but it was
and it was not new technology.
It was enabling us to have another program that had not existed previously in recent decades.
All right, thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, I think I ask this question every time. So, a distinction between providing grant money for what I'll call capital expenditure versus ongoing operating expenses. And for both the impact and the innovation grant, is that a criteria that we look at?
We can, and certainly, we don't have, because we're just now putting it on the agenda, we don't have all of the details for the 2024 impact. We could put that on a future, policy committee agenda to dive more deeply. One of the things that was discussed last time is, what are some grassroots opportunities for promoting, both these grants? And we actually had a brainstorming, and so we have kind of a rough list of some ideas, but we could pull that together and more refined of, what are some of the criteria we're gonna look at? What are some of the changes that Cher recommends, since she's already gone through this one, to streamline it, and, how can we promote it?
$500,000 seems like a lot of money for grants. Particularly since it's being added. I know we have the money available, but that's only the criteria. A little background on that. So have you had some people coming in discussing impact, which you think qualify for the impact?
We've referred some people, that we've met with, that, we've had this grant in the past, and probably have it again next year. And when we put out the applications, we did receive a lot of interest. I do think we will have the interest. I think we'll get enough applications.
Refresh my memory, can anyone apply for that?
It is for-profit, nonprofit, communities, not individuals, but,
And matching funds?
yes. So matching funds are different for the for-profit versus the other categories. I believe, Sherry, you might know this better off the top of your head. What is it?
25% cash match for for-profit businesses, and then, 25%, impact fund, or cash match, either one for, nonprofit community.
That's the requirement, that they have to come with that match.
Okay, that's good, thank you. That was the only other question I had.
Is that the requirements for cities, townships, and villages as well?
Yeah, townships and villages would fall into, they can provide in-kind match,
Okay,
And that can even be like volunteers, like
volunteer
that,
work, yeah, that's fine. I just, again, I wanna get those, wanna raise all boats.
Yep.
Yeah, I was glad to see this because we did have so many good applications that we couldn't fund last time. And as technology is changing and things are innovating, that I'm really excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah, 'cause did you say, or maybe it was Cher that said it was like $2.5 million worth of applications, and only a fifth of them could really be
I
funded.
can't remember how many, I think it was around the $2 million.
Yeah, I remember thinking, that was a lot. I understand why we didn't get it.
And the other, positive thing is that a lot of these, additional spendings align with the Green Cincinnati plan. And so I'm glad to see those things align.
All right, thank you, Michelle. The next item is the biochar project.
Before I move on to this,
Sorry.
can we have the, a vote on
Oh.
the $500,000?
So I'll motion to include, $500,000 impact grants, in the final spend down balance, and let's rephrase that.
The carryover.
The carryover balance, to be paid for in the carryover balance.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, any conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, now moving on to the biochar. This is a presentation. We discussed this at our last meeting and, decided we wanted to get more information about the biochar project. And so welcome
Thank
to
you.
our meeting. Yep.
All right, so thanks, everybody. I'm Sam Dunlap, Carbon Harvest, and Crystal Courtney, Division Manager of Department of Natural Resources at the Parks Department, is joining me as well, because this is a project that's coming through the Parks Department. So thank you for inviting me back to talk about this. The three things that were requested to hear more about were project financial breakdown. Crystal's going to speak to that. I actually forgot about that one. She reminded me of that one, so Crystal's going to cover that for me. Biochar advantages over 100% compost, and then equipment needs for support. So go ahead. So just to give a quick background on what biochar is, it's essentially charcoal that's made to add to the soil. It has a biological purpose, so it's biological charcoal. It was used by the indigenous peoples in the Amazon to keep soils fertile for hundreds, longer years, which is no small feat in a heavy rain tropical environment. So it's an ancient technology with modern relevance. Next. Or to the next one. Not loading. Okay, that's fine.
First two slides were great.
Yeah.
Thanks. And if you have any questions.
Presentation.
This is where I usually suggest that you turn it off and back on again.
Yeah, you keep-
Here says it none, I guess that's all.
Send to my
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, so biochar is made through a process called pyrolysis, in which the oils and gases that are contained in wood and other biomass, other carbonaceous biomass, are cleanly combusted, leaving behind the carbon structure. And carbon is the foundation of healthy soils. So instead of that carbon being exhausted or decomposed into the atmosphere, we can put it to work restoring depleted soils and for other beneficial uses, as we will discover here. Part of the magic with biochar, hang on one second, that little pictorial on the right there has to do with its highly porous, electrically charged structure, which makes it great for holding water and nutrients, and as a little apartment complex for all sorts of beneficial soil microorganisms. Next. So part of kind of the vision with the biochar in general, and this project here in Cincinnati, is that we're trapping carbon through, by virtue of making the biochar. We hope to be producing and utilizing energy from that process, which is an option, as long as we have the funding in place to do so. Use the biochar to improve local soils, with all sorts of beneficial implications, ultimately leading to better, more robust tree growth, which feeds into all sorts of goals of the Green Cincinnati Plan, and kind of create this virtuous cycle where we're improving the resource base over time versus the opposite. Next. Okay, so generally speaking, this is, there's a lot of caveats here, but these are some of the effects of adding bio to the soil in general. So I'm not going to read through these one by one. You can glance at them there. But generally, the goal here is we're creating healthier, more resilient plants and landscapes that further enhance climate benefits that those landscapes provide just on their own. Next. So Stockholm, Sweden was an innovator in this space and created the Stockholm Biochar Project, which was funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. I believe it won the Mayor's Challenge Award in 2018. And they've got a host of really interesting ways of using biochar. And Crystal has been there to see it in person, so it can answer any questions about that. But Bloomberg has been very impressed with the results of this and created the Stockholm Replication Grant because they wanted to see it replicated elsewhere. So next slide. Cincinnati was one of, we put together a team to apply for this Stockholm Replication Grant, and were selected as one of 10 cities in the world to participate. That was the first round of the grant, which was technical assistance. So we went through a month-long process of, on a monthly basis, meeting with Bloomberg folks as well as the folks from Stockholm to tell us about what they had done. And along the way, we had homework to basically envision what the Cincinnati Biochar Project would look like and how it would work. And that positioned us then to apply for the financial award, which then we were one of 7 cities in the world to get. So there's 3 U.S. cities and 4 European cities. So it was a $400,000 match grant. The match is from between the Parks Department and Great Parks of Hamilton County is a partner in this as well. Next. So as I mentioned, we're framing this, contextualizing this within the newly updated Green Cincinnati Plan. Biochar has a spot. I can't remember what page number now, but it is codified in the current Green Cincinnati Plan. Next. And part of the way we want to use that to meet the goals of the Green Cincinnati Plan is through the following, through urban canopy expansion efforts. It meets waste reduction goals, emissions reduction goals, local food production and urban gardening, climate resilience in general, but specifically through adding carbon into the soil, and then stormwater management as well. Next. So this is generally how it's going to work, is we'll take wood chips from the Parks Department, also Great Parks of Hamilton County, and tree companies as well to supplement if necessary. You can see on the left a rough breakdown of how much wood we're talking per year. I'll get back to that manure in a second. So we'll take those wood chips, turn them into biochar on Parks property, and by virtue of a public-private partnership in which a private operator, Carbon Harvest, is operating that biochar equipment. And then that biochar will go to, there's a couple buckets. One is local regional use, and then the second one is external sales to fund the program and keep it solvent, so that it's not a continual drain on either the Parks Department or taxpayer dollars. So with the, the compost element will be satisfied through a partnership with Great Parks, utilizing all the manure and animal bedding at Parkey's Farm, which is roughly 450 tons per year. So we'll take biochar from city parks, mix it with manure and bedding from Great Parks, and have a a finished biochar compost product that will be used to benefit both entities. So some of those, the UCC there is urban tree canopy. I already mentioned stormwater, urban agriculture. Those are kind of tops on the list for the local, regional uses. As I mentioned, we'll sell biochar, to reap revenue for the project. Carbon credits we can also obtain through, just by virtue of making the biochar. We are sequestering carbon through that process, and then as long as it goes to a validated end use, we will reap carbon dioxide removal credits, which are high value compared to carbon offsets. They're in the $120 to $150 a ton range, so it could generate some significant revenue for the project. And then I mentioned that also hoping to utilize the heat and generate electricity from that to use on parks property. Talk more about that in a second. Next. So the site we are currently evaluating is Warder Nursery, which is in Finneytown. It's actually in Springfield Township, but this is a little carve-out. The city of Cincinnati, there's a little peninsula of Springfield Township that sticks down in here. And greenhouse is a great place to site this. It's also going to be, there's a vision to supercharge Warder on behalf of the Parks Department right now to make it really a hub for both sustainability demonstration and for feeding the park system for plants and trees for all the urban forestry goals that the Parks Department has right now. And then we could use the heat in the greenhouse. It would be very nice. Next. So we've got a lot of partners who have signed up to help in this effort. These are some of those represented. Next. So generally speaking, biochar can help solve some of the problems that we have identified. The Green Cincinnati plan is to meet these challenges, and biochar can be part of that solution. Specifically, I've mentioned the tree canopy. It can contribute to both increased tree survival and also increased tree growth rates. Part of that tree survival is increasing drought resilience. I mentioned biochar can hold on to water really well. It's a little sponge. And in certain situations, it can also increase infiltration and help the water move, which is also necessary, especially when we've got tight clay soils that turn into hard pan in this summer temperatures. If we get a big rain event, we need help getting that water down into the ground. So biochar can help in that sense as well. And then, I mentioned this in the partnership with Great Parks, but biochar functions best for soil applications in conjunction with a nutrient source. So therein lies the rationale for having the compost dimension of the project. Next. I was asked to speak specifically about biochar and compost. They are not at odds with one another. They're friends. Biochar can improve both the process and the product of compost. So as you can see on the process side, it can increase the speed, and that's mainly because you have higher air penetration from all that pore space and just higher microbial activity. Better nutrient retention, decreased odors, decreased greenhouse gas emissions, and reduced leaching. And then the product is the end product. Kind of some of this overlap here, but the nutrients will stay in that compost longer. It will retain water better. It will contribute to long-term soil structure in a more long-term way because it has that durable carbon matrix that resists decomposition. Compost will tend to dissipate after, decompose and lose its contribution to the soil structure after a few years, whereas biochar is resident in the soil. It can be hundreds to thousands of years, so it's there for the long term, and that's the recalcitrant part. Next. And then just some unique advantages that biochar does have. It can eliminate PFAS, the forever chemicals, in terms of if you're using a feedstock that may have that, such as biosolids, for example, running it through a pyrolysis machine can eliminate that, but it can also help mitigate it and filter it out if it's in the environment. It can block it up. and there's other contaminants that it can, just road salt, for example. That's part of the problem with urban trees and the strip between the road and the sidewalk is, road salt is problematic. So biochar can act as a carbon filter and trap some of those contaminants that contribute to tree decline. And then just as far as advantages of biochar over compost for specific urban applications, I mentioned the stormwater infiltration and runoff. There's the contaminant removal and the carbon sequestration long-term goals. Next. Okay, so I mentioned Parkey's Farm. Just have a shot of some beautiful little animals here, but this will be the site of where the compost process will happen. And if the biochar is moving forward at Warder, there's a nice little biochar to compost corridor up Winton Road there, so it's kind of convenient in that sense. But those little guys are responsible for creating all of this in the next slide. Which can be an environmental problem if it's, not handled well. So Great Parks is in the process of doing a better job of this so that it's not creating issues in our waterways. Next. And then, yes, here's kind of the vision is the biochar with the compost, and then you have all of the, you can mix biochar with compost after the fact, but it functions best if it's included in the process because of all those process benefits that it can bring. Next. And as far as equipment needs, we are going to be in need of a skid steer to move product around on the site for loading wood chips into hoppers and moving the finished product around. So that is our ask of this group. I don't have a hard number on that because we are just in the process of talking with the biochar technology vendor, and some of the specifications for what will be required may change. So I don't want to be locked into a specific model or something at this point, but that is our equipment need. Next. And then just as far as why that need and why we see it as a worthy ask is we think that investing in biochar is building infrastructure for the organic diversion and composting at large in the city. We're developing plans, biochar is part of future plans for expanding organic diversion, building relationships both public and private with entities that are going to be responding to the city's RFP for organic diversion coming up. There's conversations in all of these levels about weaving biochar into that fabric. And then we see this as a pilot. There are other applications for pyrolysis technology. As I mentioned, biosolids is one of them. But we see this as an investment in the future of our region and the vision for Warder Nursery, which I'll just finish with that. Next. Which is as a sustainability campus. As I mentioned before, this is, as a demonstration site for sustainable technology, for education, green jobs. We've got a great partnership with Groundwork Ohio River Valley to do green workforce development with their young adult and teen programs. And then Warder, as I mentioned before, as a feeder for parks and urban tree canopy renewal efforts. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Crystal to add any final thoughts.
Take any questions, I think. Any questions around financials or anything like that? What is the total cost of the project? So right now we are, as Sam mentioned, there are some elements that are above and beyond our original program, and that would be recovering the heat from the unit as well as the electricity generation. And so those are the pieces that we're really looking to either supplement through IRA funding or, kind of post. But at this point, we have about 1.6 million raised.
Sorry, not raised. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, we are there with the urban tree canopy goals. Sorry.
Yeah, I think for all in, we're looking at about a $2.2 million project. We're anticipating with the IRA funding that is available for various elements, whether it's the 30% for energy recovery, the 10% for domestic use, and
then just where the machinery is placed, we're looking at about a $600,000 return on investment from that, which would bring the project down to 1.6, but it would really take that initial investment in the energy recovery piece in order to get that or to recoup that cost. And through the financial breakdown, we've figured that it would cost as much to run this project in the beginning without that at 1.6, if that's what the final number would be if we didn't have that energy recovery option. And also with the return on investment from the IRA, it would be about 1.6 out of pocket at the end of the day.
Down there is just fronting the difference, you know, that 600 difference. We need to identify where to do that. The city may have some options, and the government may have some options for us on that front.
So those are the startup costs, but once it's all operating, it's the sale of the material can help.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a revenue generator.
It's gonna pay for itself.
And that's how we designed it. That's how, I mean, the scale of the machine that we went after was intended to produce enough biochar that we could sell what we needed and produce enough for in-house use, to pay for the operation so that it didn't end up impacting city budget. Knowing how city budgets are, making that ask up front was not an option. So as far as the staffing that would be needed to run it in-house, all these other pieces, that's why we partnered with a private partner in order to operate the machine, and to, you know, kind of manage that whole sales portion because it's so far out of what public servants are typically doing. So, yes, the entire program is built around being financially sustainable for perpetuity. And as, you know, Sam put forward on the slide that had all the different partners, there are a handful of those partners that are already intending to purchase biochar, whether it's in the raw form for composting operations, or whether it's in that landscape form mixed with the compost for use in the landscape. So, we have good feedback so far from folks that are interested in it, and, you know, just seeing what they've done in Stockholm with how they've redesigned their streetscapes and the potential that we have here to really do solid, innovative work for the next 100 years, I think it's a no-brainer. It's an honor, actually, to just be a part of such an innovative process Bloomberg has put forward for us.
So this is a little bit of an unfair question, so if you need to get back to me.
Yeah.
And I have the wrong terms here, but if I wanted a dump truck full of fill and a dump truck full of biochar, what are the costs? How do they compare? Is that?
It depends how big your dump truck is, I guess.
Right. But I mean, is it on a scale, is it double, is it about the same, is it?
Well, I'm not familiar with fill cost, I guess, but, I mean, the working rule of thumb number we're using is $150 a cubic yard, but we may sell in larger volume. You know, at larger volumes, it would be less than that.
So that's what you would sell the biochar at?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Is that the biochar that's already ready to be sold, or is that the stuff that you can add?
That's kind of the raw product.
Raw versus activated,
Yeah.
is kind of what is the one that with the beneficial uses.
Activated, it tends to shake out about the same cost. It's just 50%, about 50% compost to 50% biochar. So there's less biochar in it, right, at that end product.
Yeah, so it's cheaper per unit, but the biochar value is kind of the same.
Does this have, you know, you said it acts like a sponge, and you know, I'm not a science guy, I'm a social studies guy, but let's say, for example, that we were to use this fill around, let's say, a gas station. Would that, and there was some kind of leakage, would that store that as well as water, or is that gonna make it a lot worse? Is it environmental health, or would that make?
Yeah, it depends what it is. You know, there's different studies, using biochar for specific contaminant removal, so it really depends what it is. It's been highly effective for removing zinc, for example, from industrial processes, like 92% of zinc removal. It's really good at removing nitrogen and phosphorus. So from a, you know, agricultural, you know, usage standpoint, and you know, to try to eliminate that entering waterways, it's really effective. It just really depends on what kind of pollutant you're talking about.
So the new state budget has put a lot of money in, I'm gonna get it wrong, there's one that's Najee Osborne's song in Brownstone or Brownfield?
Brownfield.
Brownfield. Brownstone, they put a lot of money in. This is a big concern in a lot of communities now. There is literature on that subject, it's just not really been used a lot, for
Well, if you think about it, you can carbon filter pretty much anything. That's what we use for filtering water, for filtering effluents that are coming out of factories. But typically that filter, once it's ran its useful lifespan, becomes then a waste product.
Okay.
And these applications, I would say, you are looking at more, especially as Sam mentioned, with the agricultural aspects. If you have farmers that are using a lot of fertilizer and things on their fields, one of our biggest issues with algae blooms is from those fields then leaching. So what some of the research has said is like you can put in a buffer strip of just biochar kind of around the border of your farm, and then it will filter that before it has a chance to reach. As far as brownfield remediation goes, I think it's more of like a soil remediation in order to make that site more productive. But I don't know, I guess, like Sam was saying, it kind of depends on what the leachate is, what the conditions are of that site, and whether it is, you know, filtering effluent coming off, or whether it's intended to stay on site in order to improve the, I guess, you know, kind of biofiltration system on site.
Okay. So we're getting more and more options for this. I don't know if you're familiar with it's Warren County, I think, the King's Bullet Factory, which sat there decrepit for years and years and years. And I remember as like a 7-year-old, my dad's a general contractor. He goes, one day we're going to turn this into condos, and it was just the lead abatement that needed to be done was just, and they got it done.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible space. So, and that's the kind of the purpose of asking that question is what other dual uses, which that's what makes a program like this beneficial, because we could try it on a limited basis with one sample, and if it doesn't work, well, we go back to the drawing board. So I appreciate your presentation and the science behind it, and I'll go look up on the internet and put it in my terms and try to figure out what it means. But I do, so there is a lot of peer-reviewed research on this that I can go dig through the journal.
Yeah, they have, I feel like every biochar presentation now starts with like the tidal wave of biochar research, you know, it's like a handful of studies in 2015, and now it's just like, yeah, tons of research going on.
And the problem with those, as someone who's actually reviewed journals for politics, is that, man, there's like a 8 or 12 month delay, so you don't get really the most recent.
Yeah.
Because it's got to go through a peer review process and things like that. But yeah, okay.
Some of the most impressive work I've seen is the work that they're doing in the Northeast just to restore fields that were less fallow and aren't producing anything, right? So they're able to actually go in, fracture that soil, incorporate biochar, and then do a whole reforestation project where they couldn't get anything to grow, you know, had, you know, 0 to 10% success is now nearly 100% successful, all because of this product. Like, it's almost too good to be true, but when you start seeing the research come out year after year after year, and the results of that from trusted sources, I think the opportunities are endless here. And for me, as an urban forester, you know, we plant a lot of trees in areas that have really small root space. We started getting into this, you know, using soil cells and things like that with our Department of Transportation Engineering, but putting a plastic structure underground is a fear for most engineers. Anybody can cut through it. The work that they've done in Stockholm to design these tree pits that are all based on this specific rock structure and biochar incorporated, that has better success rates for trees overall. They're like literally capturing all of the stormwater in Stockholm directly into their sidewalks, filtering it before it goes out to the local bays. They have the same issues that we have here with combined sewer systems. So that, to me, long-term, I feel like is one of the most exciting aspects of this. Soil regeneration, soil volume improvements, and stormwater mitigation.
There's use for mine reclamation too, that's like that's kind of more in that realm that you're talking about. And then, as far as that Northeast, there's a Chesapeake Bay Biochar Initiative going on right now where, they have a grant from Fish and Wildlife the title of the grant is Scaling Biochar in the Chesapeake. So it's specifically for stormwater, both quality and quantity.
I'm not familiar really with Warder. Is that actually a parks location? Okay. And then, there was another question. When you guys presented at the Midwest Regional Sustainability Summit, I thought there was a mention of location at, Mount Airy Forest. I guess that may have fallen apart. Well, as you were presenting here, I'm like, oh, I like that as far as the heat capture, so, yeah.
This was actually our first site that we had looked at, back when we started this project 2 years ago, and was just kind of poo-pooed for various reasons. There was a whole different leadership team at that time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we were going to co-locate our entire Division of Natural Resources, field crews at DO, and the ticket came back at, almost $2.8 million more than anticipated, so.
Yeah.
Figure we better off just to invest the similar funding into an existing structure, and the opportunities there are endless. Just the way that Warder was the original tree farm for Mount Airy.
Gotcha.
During like the, 1940s, like reforestation project there.
Yeah.
So just the history, it's all WPA buildings, it's, it's been there for a long time. For parks, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on plant material every year because Warder has been so underutilized, so that's another really exciting aspect of this, just that pivot, which was a gut punch at first after 2 years of planning for Deal. But just seeing the real opportunity here long-term is huge.
So what's the time, like, when you all get this up and going, how quickly do your partners get access to this stuff?
Because you want to figure.
I know, I'm thinking.
I mean, quickly, we're gonna be pumping out a lot of biochar.
We're finalizing negotiations, or we're beginning negotiations right now with the pyrolysis equipment providers. So we should be buttoning that up here in the next, 2 months, get into contract with them. From there, it takes, 6 to 8 months to produce the machine. It takes another 2 months to get it in place, but our goal has always been to be producing biochar by spring of next year. A lot of that is dependent upon the site development that also needs to happen in order to connect water and three-phase electricity to the site. But all of those elements are being analyzed alongside the procurement of the pyrolysis unit. This time next year, I think we will be cutting our teeth in how does this actually work and function. And then as far as usability and, the landscape, then that would have another 3 months residence time with the composting piece of it, so.
So, I saw Stormwater noted as a partner. Is MSD still a partner?
They were. Are you speaking to that?
They kind of got hot and cold, but.
Yeah, they had some folks, so Mary Lynn Loader was on our original feasibility committee, as well as Larry Falcon, and both have since left the city. They were a partner once we got this grant, were pretty much from the beginning, so that they would put in about $200,000. And then after those two left, we were informed that funding wasn't actually ever officially approved for this particular project, because they had already been investing so much time and energy into this biosolid anaerobic digester. So they didn't, which their intention was to essentially create a similar product, something that can be utilized in the landscape.
It's not a similar product.
But, yeah, with the PFAS, findings coming out, I think it's not really sure where that project is. So, end of the day, they could be we could be a supplier for pilot projects, which is essentially what we were trying to accomplish through that $200,000 was put $200,000 up front, then we will invest $200,000 worth of biochar into a stormwater mitigation project. So I think that partnership is still there long-term, but I think it'll be more of a purchase agreement or investment up front.
But there are the Fuse fellows coming to Sue's office. One's going to be focused on green infrastructure and stormwater, and Ollie Kroner's hopeful that that may bridge to some opportunities with biochar.
What did you say?
I don't know enough about Fuse as a
They're like 3 more staff people that will be fellows that are gonna work on specific issues.
MSD.
from
No,
OES.
For OES, we just got funded for 3 fellows, and then one of the subject areas is gonna be the green infrastructure.
So that may bring some opportunity, but SD1 has been receptive as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, because we deal with runoff all the time.
Yeah.
It's a huge issue for both the stormwater district and for MSD.
Yeah.
And so if we've got something here that can capture water before it enters the system, and other people's basements too, then that presents a
huge opportunity for us.
And helping the ground capture it more effectively.
Well, that's right, there's projects that happen upstream to keep it from running off to begin with. So I would be really interested in, maybe helping promote the partnership between MSD, guys, if that's necessary.
I believe it.
That would be
So-
great. That would be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So where has this process been replicated in the U.S.?
Everybody's sort of at the infancy here. Lincoln, Nebraska, and Minneapolis are the other two, US cities, and we're all at similar points. I mean, there's different municipalities using biochar, but as far as the Bloomberg cities, we're all at the same place. But I mentioned the Chesapeake Bay, they've got a lot of work going on. I've heard New York City is trying to get in on the action. Baltimore's got a big program that they're working on. There's a bunch going on in California too, but.
And so, in that regard, these are all municipal operations. So we're on the cutting edge of municipal wood waste, utilization to create biochar. The private sector,
Are the private sector ones out there?
absolutely. The Wood Innovation Grant that came out at the beginning of this year, from what we saw and who was awarded, just in our region, the 3 that were awarded, hundreds of thousands of dollars were for biochar creation, but they were from like wood processing facilities, things of that nature. So not at the municipal scale.
The U.S. Biochar Initiative is a good, the U.S. Biochar Initiative is a good place to go for information on different projects. They're just sort of the consortium for U.S. biochar producers, users, kind of everybody that's part of that community.
Yeah, I was looking for specific sites that they have a 5-year track record or something.
I've visited multiple sites. Like I said, Stockholm's been at it for a long time. They really cut their teeth in it and we learned a lot from their failures, I will say. We went to Missouri earlier this year to see the same machine that we are procuring, was producing in that area, but it was on a private farm. The guy did, wood milling, things of that nature, and was using that wood product. As far as municipal scale, we are very much on the cutting edge with our most, kind of comparable cities that are doing it being in Europe.
Sam, what's your experience? You're the proposed operator, is that correct?
I'm under contract to do that.
So, I assume you've put together a pro forma for this, is that available for review?
We are refining it, we can share it though.
Okay.
So we've been having several meetings on each tab of the financial spreadsheet, with Parks leadership, recently.
Yeah, I think once we get through the negotiations with the, production manufacturers and we get the finals on what the capital needs will be for water with regards to energy and water, those numbers will be very much more refined here in the next 2 months.
What other kind of looks have you done in terms of energy use and things?
Which
studies have you looked at, or not, have you done rather for this site in terms of energy usage?
Well, we had to pivot to this site fairly recently, so, planning and design within Parks Department is really analyzing all of that right now. And then, Sue's office has a relationship with One Energy Analytics. They're an energy consultant, so they've been involved they did some energy modeling for Deal Road, but now that's no longer relevant. But, we'll do the same thing with this site.
And I don't remember from the map, was there gonna be geothermal at Warder as well to capture any of it?
They pitched that to Springfield Township as part of this sustainable technologies demonstration site. I personally don't really know why there would be if we have biochar on site, because they would be redundant.
Well,
But I don't know, maybe you have
I was thinking of it as, if you're creating the heat from the biochar, to at least put it there.
Put it in the
So you
geothermal.
needed it for the winter, so.
Yeah, and they probably, there's a lot of smart guys that thought about this. We haven't talked about that with them.
Yeah, and part of going through that pro forma and understanding the full cost, knowing that we have, the funding to to manage most of the capital expenses right now.
Yeah.
That additional, like, $500,000 for those elements that would capture the heat and retail, is still a number, it's still a percentage that we're looking for funding for it.
Gotcha.
But it'll be running in the winter too, so I mean, as far as storing heat, it's gonna be continuously generating heat, so there's a boiler system that we could feed into,
Well, and I was
readily.
even thinking too, just not even with the greenhouse, but, so I'm familiar with, I don't know if you've been there, Earth Connection over at, kind of across the campus from Mount St. Joseph.
I've read about it, I've never actually
Okay,
been there.
so they've got a geothermal system, so they basically don't have a heating bill because
Right.
they stored everything in the summer for the winter and stuff like that. So even like if there was an office or something there, I didn't know if there was a way to capture that.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, right now, water is completely run on water,
Gotcha.
and it's an oil-based system.
Gotcha.
So the siting for the biochar machine will be right next to that. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but again,
Yeah.
it's that gap
It's
in
that-
being
and the
able
cost.
to cover the cost of the
Yeah.
boiler itself.
What kind of community discussion has been had in Springfield Township with?
Just beginning, really. We just pivoted to water in June,
Okay,
so we're,
so,
like I said, got
But
one.
there was a meeting with certain leaders in Springfield Township that we don't, neither of us was at the meeting, but, the planning and design guys just had a meeting with some folks from, also in planning and design, I think, at Springfield Township
Okay.
last week. So they're at least aware and
We're aware.
have the kind of initial first pass of, yeah, this sounds like a good idea.
what, is water on a county road or a township road or?
It's off of Deal, it's off of a residential street.
That deal, North Country.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
no,
I
it's
was
off
like,
of
that
Water
was
Road. Water Road, right?
Water
Well,
Road.
yeah, off Water, yeah,
Which is a residential street off of North Bend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a township street off of a
City Road, I guess? I don't know.
county,
Well,
county.
Okay,
and
I don't know.
am I thinking right?
One
Is
of
it-
those where somebody donated land outside of the city to the city.
So my question is, are trucks coming in and out?
It's city
Winton,
property.
North
It's
Bend?
real
But
close
it's
to
not in
the
the
North
city.
Bend
Oh, that's what I-
It's a golf
intersection.
course.
Then I kinda know
Right.
roughly where it is.
That's
Yeah.
another part of the planning
If you're going up
discussion.
Winton, that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I
We're talking,
Too many.
Yeah.
Part of the discussion with Springfield Township, they have, township-owned parcels
Mhm.
on east and west of the site. So that's at the very beginning of these discussions is, whether we can do an easement or purchase, part of this parcel, to use that for ingress and egress from the site.
Okay, but as far as, so the roads, I know that Springfield Township in Corrine is in the same spot. Our road program is way behind. Springfield Township actually now has an option where communities can opt in for an additional levy by neighborhood to do roads. So as a township person, I'd be real concerned about a bunch of trucks going up and down my township road when I'm already behind in roads. And I think I think you're probably gonna be a little bit surprised at the, public opposition you might see from this, from just traffic issues and road issues and things like that. That's gonna be, I think, a pretty significant obstacle.
well, the old Whitaker Elementary, if you know where that is
Yeah.
on Winton, there's a little road that goes, on the side of that, I guess on the south side of that piece of property that connects into the forthcoming Warder Preserve, which then connects to Warder Nursery. So the preserve is gonna be, I think, later this year or in 6 months or something. But I guess there was an initial conversation last week that we may be able to access the site through that existing road that is just for utility vehicles at this point.
And really, the only change is going to be, it'll really be just around moving biochar from our site to our east farm. We still have tree trucks that are running there all the time, so, as far as like park staff and, an increased traffic flow from that perspective, doesn't change much.
But, so you're still working on zoning?
Yeah, understanding it. Spent a good 6 months doing it in Cincinnati, now it's a new, township.
How about environmental permits?
I've got a long rundown from Ohio EPA, their compliance assistance office, kind of here's what you need to think about, and, from air quality, stormwater, the two main ones.
How does this match up with our site right there?
Question, I don't know, I mean, a composting site is, or a solid waste site would fall under, but I'm not sure biochar would be. Ohio EPA's definition of is biochar as the kind of composting.
I would be surprised if.
The biochar is the end product, not the product.
And compost is just a component of it.
For the
Is it a
activity.
composting site? It doesn't sound.
This would not be the composting site would be on Parky's Farm.
I've had no conversations that would lead to that assumption that this is classified as a composting
Yeah, it
site
was,
or process.
yeah, they're not intended on composting the air.
But I mean, you're just talking about is biochar, it's considered a compost process, and I,
Would this site be considered a solid waste or a composting facility?
I think it's part of operations, parks operations,
Yeah,
kind of how we were running into it in Cincinnati. I think the point too that, you know, in the Green Cincinnati plan, and it sounds like for this board, there's interest in organic diversion and a larger composting, you know, organic, you know, kind of site long-term. This will essentially be like, we're literally the pilot for what could be down the line, where we could really take that compost to the next level. If you had a pyrolysis unit that was there, it could also cover the energy needs for that site. And I know Sue's been working on this for a long time, but I feel like biochar replication regionally is a very viable option for any future composting sites that come.
You probably need to have some discussion with Ohio EPA in terms of classification, pyrolysis as a waste.
yeah, I mean, we've had the preliminary conversations with them to say, okay, here's what you need to, you know, these are the permits of relevance to you. Waste disposal wasn't one of them, but we'll kind of rekindle that conversation.
And that could lead you into criteria.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting innovation that's come into our region that will make it, you know, economically feasible and inexpensive for people, local farmers, for local MSD to use, for us to really enhance our soils so that we're better prepared for heat waves and floods, and we're gonna have the best canopy in the Midwest.
Yeah, maybe.
Getting there.
Yeah. So, thank you for all your
Yeah,
work.
thanks for the
Yeah.
presentation, really appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on, unless there are any other questions. Informational items, our solid waste plan updates. Michelle?
This will be short, so as of right now, we're at 95%. We have, 44 of the 48 communities, just up 4. I believe 2 of them voted this week, we just don't have the resolution in hand, so I don't count it unless I actually have the resolution. And we have, there's just 2 more they have until August 1st to do. So we've been on it, calling them, making sure it's on their agenda, and so hopefully we'll get to that 100%.
Great, congratulations.
So what happens when we get this fully ratified?
Once we get it, all of the communities, we have the Board of County Commissioners, so once that August 5th occurs, we've hit we have to get 60%, we're at 95, so we've gotten our percentage, but, you know, I'd like the 100%. Once the ratification period is over, we will then send it to Ohio EPA, and they have to set the final step, they have to approve it.
Left communities?
4 communities left.
And you're working on them.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
2 of them I think have already voted. They say they've already voted, I just don't have their votes.
It's just a matter of time. Yeah.
But it's already done. Is that what you need?
Yeah, that's right. All right, congratulations on that. Environmental enforcement update, Deputy Peak is not here, so we'll postpone this until the next meeting. All right, State Bill 119, informational overview. Michelle, that's you.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick, just kind of information that this is happening. The Senate recently passed a bill, they're in recess right now, but the Ohio Senate recently passed a bill that has some solid waste implications, and the 2 big ones are the way that joint solid waste districts divorce or separate, that we don't have to worry about that for single county solid waste districts, but it affects that. And then the other one is there's a provision in there that solid waste districts can collect fees on C and D waste, which we've never been able to do because C and D is, ever since the beginning of solid waste legislation in Ohio, has not been considered solid waste. So they, the proposal is that, solid waste districts would be able to pass fees similar to how we do on solid waste, pass fees on C and D. The stipulation is we would then transfer 100% of that, we would not keep it to, health districts for, inspection of C and D facilities. So,
Since they need more money.
well, so I've been talking, a lot with Chuck DeJonker about this, and, he was up in Columbus, he's on virtually, he's probably driving though, so, he was up in Columbus today, so he's not here in person. So I just wanted to make you aware that this is happening, it's only past one half of, you know, it's only past that, and it still has to go to the House. It's changed at least a dozen times to get to where it is right now. And so if you have, you know, specific questions about it, Craig and I can try to answer them, but I just wanted to make you aware that it was happening. If it did pass the way that it's written right now, it would basically, need to, just similar to how we would change our fees, that's how we would add that fee. So if it either needs to be part of our solid waste plan, or we would have to go out for ratification. That's how it's written right now, if we wanted to collect this fee. The primary benefit would be, right now, Hamilton County Public Health covers their costs, for, construction and demolition, inspections, but, after a facility is closed, they don't get fees, and they still have to go and collect. So this could potentially, you know, create a bucket of funds that would help fund those inspections after a facility. Craig, did you have anything else?
No, you summarized it very nicely.
Was there a specific incident in Ohio that caused this? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Without going into all the details.
The Sunny Farm
Sunny Farm,
landfill, yeah.
Sunny Farm.
They're collecting, pulverized C and D debris from out of state, and it is causing a major headache for that county. So that's not an issue that we have here, but that's what it is.
So the fee would be on, I haven't read the bill, fee would be on any material going into a C and D landfill, or it's on C and D waste regardless of whether.
Is there anything in the bill saying like how much per ton or anything that would be?
Chuck has provided that for us. So right now the tipping fee is 80 cents per cubic yard. This would increase it, or is that per ton? Hold on. So right now, most is passed through to Ohio EPA. Hamilton County Public Health gets about 20 cents per cubic yard.
Okay.
So if this bill passed the way that it's written right now, it would be an additional $1, or 50 cents per cubic yard. I'm sorry, there's tonnage and cubic yards written in here, so 50 cents per cubic yard, so it would be an additional $235,000 a year based on last year's, 2020 numbers, so.
Those are restricted funds for,
Yeah, we would not touch any of that,
it's restricted to public health, level too, with what they can do with it, okay.
exactly, and it's very restricted to what they can do with it.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
Just an observation that Ohio EPA has sort of over the years been gradually, increasing the say they're heading it more and more towards having them meet the same requirements as, solid waste landfills. They aren't there, but that's been the past trend.
Okay, thank you for the update. Did it pass the Senate, or?
It passed the Senate, they're in recess right now.
Yeah, right, so it'll go to the House, more to come, see if it gets any traction in the House. Okay, moving on, upcoming resource meeting, they were already on to the next meeting. September 20th, 2023, at 3, because we're back in the school year.
Yep.
So we've got going on here? Okay, I am, as I've said earlier, very interested in moving this meeting to an outside space that might be an interesting location for us, to talk about the work that we do in partnership with others. So, I would welcome ideas, weather permitting, that we do that. I think it would be really interesting if we can swing it with the technology and what we need to have in those locations. So, Michelle, would you mind looking into that to see if we can do that? Okay, so.
Just on that, I think in the very, very early years of the district, that was done where the policy committee meetings were moved around the county.
They in like buildings, like civic buildings?
Yeah, probably.
We, as the commission the Board of County Commissioners used to do this when I was president, and it was good fun. And we learned all kinds of stuff from all these different communities. It was really, and the communities loved it because we went there and brought attention to what they were doing. So it was a dual benefit. So I just really like that model. So if we can, not all the time, but occasionally, if we can swing something.
So I'll add to that I get out at 2:35, and Price Hill to here is boom.
One thing, but
Yeah, if we were to move to like, I don't know, Anderson Township or something, I'd be in big trouble, so.
Well, these, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Right.
because I'm wondering, like, if they did September, we could do November at the hub then.
They're very close.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're closer to you even.
I don't like to leave Price Hill
Well,
unless.
you won't have to because it's lower right now.
You'll be all set.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll look into it and let everybody know.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for the good of the cause? I'm gonna take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
One second.
Okay.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Yep.
Just rise, and we'll take that as a signal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.